Alright, in this video I'm going to show you how to find a peer-reviewed source. So you're first going to need to click on I am, and then you go to Current Hawk, and then Library. That's how we find our library search page. Now first of all, let's talk about what a peer-reviewed source is. A peer-reviewed source is a source that is written by an expert in a field and is reviewed by other experts in that field. So a scientist writes a paper, he has it reviewed by other scientists, and they give it the approval to publish. So with that, for these reasons, because it's written by experts and also rigorously reviewed by experts, it's considered in the academic community the most credible form of information. So it's not just any source that you find in the library databases, and it's not just a source that was written by a scientist. It has to be reviewed by other experts, and so there's certain ways we can know that something is peer-reviewed. And it's important that you understand that a peer-reviewed source isn't just any source that we find in the library. So if you just did a random search here, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a peer-reviewed source unless you check this box right here. So this is a nifty little option here to search for a peer-reviewed source. And then if we do our search here, we could search for media violence, or we could search for social media and privacy. And we probably want to check full text too, so we get articles that we actually have access to. So this is in our one search, so it's going to search everything, all the databases that it can access through the library. And so while we're waiting for this to pop up, here we go. So these, because we checked the peer-reviewed box, hopefully if all went well, that means everything that we found is a peer-reviewed source. So peer-reviewed sources are also going to say academic journal right here. They'll be listed as an academic journal. And if possible, it's best to use the PDF version of a file if available. So we can click on the source itself to get the information page, and that'll tell us where it shows up, but the PDF full text is what's going to give us the page numbers and the actual source. So where possible, if there's a PDF version, use that so that you can grab the page numbers and use those in your citations. So a peer-reviewed source is going to usually show up in an academic journal. Actually, it always will. And they're going to look differently depending on the journal. But there are certain characteristics that they'll have. They're always going to have citations. They're always going to have a lengthy references section, usually academic language. And they're going to show up in a journal, like I said. So this is one example of a peer-reviewed source. If we go back to our main source page, or our search page, we'll see that there's quite a few peer-reviewed sources on this subject. Some of them say full text finder, which means we'll have to we'll click on that and hopefully be able to find the full text, but if they have a PDF available, some of them will say HTML and PDF. Again, go with the PDF if possible. So when you click on your PDF here, this is a more typical peer-reviewed source that you might see. Oftentimes they start with an abstract, they have a DOI number, and they have a certain format. So they'll start like with an introduction, and then they'll maybe have some background information and different sections. And you'll see there's lots of citations throughout. So that's another example of a peer-reviewed source. There's another example of a peer-reviewed source. You can see there's an abstract. You can see the way that it's formatted looks very academic. And they're usually, like I said, going to have an introduction. This one conforms to a more common form of peer-reviewed source format where we have a methods section. Often your sources will have that, but not always in a peer-reviewed source. Methods talks about how they perform the experiment. So it's easy to get bogged down in this section. Don't worry about reading this really slowly and carefully. You can kind of speed read through the methods and the analysis sections. The most important thing in your peer-reviewed source to read is what they found out from the experiment. So the discussion or the results sections, this is what you want to read carefully. And you'll notice the language is oftentimes a little more technical, so it will require those critical reading skills. But this section will be key as And oftentimes there's sometimes a discussion and a results or a conclusion section, so you want to pay attention to those. So basically, the easiest way to find a peer-reviewed source is to check this box. That's the best way to do it. Type in your search terms. If no source shows up, try some different keywords, or try chatting with a librarian for help, and they can give you some ideas. But a peer-reviewed source is going to be written by experts, reviewed by experts, and it's going to show up as peer-reviewed under our library databases as an academic journal. So those are probably the easiest ways that you can make sure that you have a peer-reviewed source. It is possible to find peer-reviewed sources in other places, but the library pays for a subscription to all these peer-reviewed sources. A lot of other websites will try to charge you money, but you don't need to do that. Just go through the library databases, and that's a very easy, straightforward way to find your peer-reviewed source. It's good to have the minimum number of peer-reviewed sources that you need for the assignment. You can check your assignment guidelines for that, but the more peer-reviewed sources you have, the stronger your argument tends to be. So it's okay to have more than one if you choose to do so. Now just remember, these peer-reviewed sources, you need to read them carefully. You might have to print them out and mark them up and annotate them, look up some words. If you have any trouble navigating or finding peer-reviewed sources, don't hesitate to reach out to me or to a librarian in an email or chat message.